This episode of Harvey Brownstone Interviews is brought to you by the Harvey Brownstone Talk Show Blend Coffee, available at hollywoodblends.com. Everyone's saying it's the best coffee they've ever tasted. Why not give it a try and see for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's special guest is not only a legendary television personality, talk show host, and author, he is the reason I wanted to be an interviewer. He's my inspiration, my role model, and my American Idol. From 1968 to 2007, on a variety of TV networks and in different formats, our guest hosted one of the world's most popular TV talk shows. With his keen intellect and unique wit, he set the bar for intelligent, sophisticated conversation with the world's greatest legendary stars. He was known as the thinking man's talk show host, and his show offered a forum for controversial opinions and issues ranging from feminism, domestic and international affairs, to the Vietnam War. The Dick Cavett Show became a home away from home for the top stars from the world of movies, television, and sports. And of course, through him, we got to know the greatest comedy legends of all time. Our guest has written a number of best-selling books, starting in 1974 with Cavett, followed by Eye on Cavett in 1983, and then he released Talk Show, Confrontations, Pointed Commentary, and Off-Screen Secrets, which is a fascinating collection of essays written by our guest for the New York Times when he had a popular online column. And most recently, he released Brief Encounters, Conversations, Magic Moments, and Assorted Hijinks, in which he introduces us to the fascinating and iconic characters who have crossed his path over the years. Everyone from Stan Laurel and Elizabeth Taylor to Muhammad Ali and James Gandolfini. Over the years, our guest has had many extraordinary moments. He's hosted Saturday Night Live. He's made cameo appearances in Cheers, A Night on Elm Street 3, Beetlejuice, Forrest Gump, and Apollo 13. He's done voiceover work on The Simpsons. On Broadway, he appeared in Otherwise Engaged, and he was the narrator in Into the Woods and in the Broadway revival of the Rocky Horror Show. And every fan of the legendary pop group ABBA knows about his highly memorable interview with the entire group for his 1981 TV special, Dick Cavett Meets ABBA. Throughout his illustrious career, our guest has earned 9 Emmy Award nominations and won 2 Emmy Awards, along with a Cable Ace Award. He was also nominated for 6 Photoplay Awards for Favorite Variety Star, and in 2016, he won the Spirit of Katharine Hepburn Award. I am delighted and deeply honored to welcome the legendary Dick Cavett to our show. Dick, thank you so much for being here.
Have I really done all that?
Yes, and even more.
Would you mind reading the whole thing again? If it's, I loved hearing that. It's tiring, actually. My God, it's a wonder there's anything left of me. But how good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you, Dick. I want you to know that I grew up watching your show, totally mesmerized by your interviewing style and the way you and your guests related to each other. Dick, this is a real pinch me moment, and it means the world to me to have you here on our show. So before I even ask you one question, I want to thank you so very much for granting me this interview.
Well, that's okay. I'm not charging you 1 cent. Did they tell you that?
They did, but I would have paid $1 million. I want to start by mentioning our mutual friend, Joan Kramer, who was on our show with David Healy to talk about her movies. And she said that working for you as a talent coordinator was the best job she ever had. You two were quite a team, weren't you?
And those two are quite a team. And they really have turned out some splendid television. They even got better after they left me, but I'll just have to accept that.
Well, early on in your career, you were a writer for Jack Paar. What was the most important thing you learned from him?
I don't know what I learned from Jack. I know that I was obsessed with him in almost a religious manner. I almost think I didn't miss any late Jack Paar late night show. And I couldn't get enough of him. And one day, somebody's column in New York said Jack Paar worries more about his monologue than anything in his day. And somebody showed me that. And I thought, why don't I write a monologue for him and see what happens? I did write it. Do I take it to him? Yes. So I go down to the RCA building, 6th Avenue, up to the studios, which I had sneaked into many times. And here came Jack from the men's room. And I don't know if that detail is important to this, but so it happened. It was my luck. And I had the kind of sneaky instinct to carry. I had a CBS envelope with a big CBS logo. I carried that, which caught his eye. And to make a long story even less interesting, I I handed it to him. He took it, and I thought, I'm in, maybe. Sat in the audience, which I had done before. He came out, took papers out of his pocket, and I saw the future bright. Except nothing on the paper was for me. It was a story about mothers-in-law and traffic. And but during the show, he ad-libbed some of my lines as part of his conversation, and that transformed me. If you'd known me before that, I was a different person.
Well, we're all very thankful to Kim. I read that you were the one who brought Woody Allen to the Jack Paar show and introduced him to the American public. Is that right?
I'm told that's true. Yeah, yeah. I met Woody the day after Groucho's God and one of Woody's, the great George S. Kaufman, had died. And I went to the club where Woody was playing, and I thought, oh, this brilliant lines, one after another, coming from the stage. And I met him afterwards, and he said, he was sitting where people could see him as they came out. They walked past, and I said, does that take nerve? And he said, it does a bit, because of the people come out and say the girl singer was great, but Jesus, that comedian. But in fact, the audiences largely, and I would say entirely, thought he was wonderful. I couldn't believe one line after another was enough to make someone's career. What a writer.
When Jack Paar introduced Jane Mansfield on his show, he said, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Jane Mansfield. Is it true that you wrote that line?
I believe that was mine, and I hoped everyone would get it.
Oh, we got it. We got it. You also worked for Johnny Carson as a writer when he took over The Tonight Show. What did you think of Johnny?
We were friends. I had met him briefly before in Nebraska, where he was a big star on Nebraska television. And he went to New York and made it. And I saw him again in New York, and we reminisced about being in Nebraska. And we remained really good friends. He was wonderful to work for. He would tell you when he thought something you did was good, which is always nice. Yeah, he was a giant talent, of course. And I hate to use this expression, a swell guy. I don't believe I said that. Take that out.
I know you started out doing magic, and then you were an actor, and then you did stand-up comedy. Why did you decide to become an interviewer?
I don't know that I decided to. It seems to me that my manager, Jack Rollins, thought it would be a good idea to possibly do a talk show. And I thought, well, that's silly. But I got to like it. And it was a wonderful, when I think of the people I met and the people I got to talk to, it's staggering to me. And it seems a little still like a dream.
Well, it was a dream for the audience. I mean, one of the most impressive and unique aspects of your show, Dick, was that you were able to convince celebrities who never gave interviews to come on your show, like Marlon Brando, Laurence Olivier, Noel Coward, Katharine Hepburn. How were you able to get these big stars to come on your show?
I was hoping you could tell me. I don't know. I was often surprised. I would take a chance, and the chance often paid off, as we know. I must say, in praise of myself, that what people who came on, and I would ask them why, they said, well, you know, I had been on your show once and I was more comfortable, they said, than I've ever been on a talk show. And I can understand that, partly because I had been on talk shows before I did one. I knew what it was like to be a guest and how you felt and what you hoped would happen and wouldn't happen. And that made it easier to put people at ease who hadn't been otherwise before.
Have I made you feel comfortable yet?
I'm starting to ease up and find you impeccably good.
Oh, Dick.
Brownstone, is it?
But how much preparation and research did you do before each interview?
It varied. Sometimes you don't need any. I mean, there's some people that you just know there isn't going to be time to get a tenth of in what I want to. I had associate producers, I think maybe that's what they were called, talent coordinators, and they would, if it was Peter Ustinov, they might go to his hotel and get some notes that way, or if not, make some up from what they knew about him. So I had notes. Once one of my friends, a good friend of mine, said, you know, you're getting a little too attached to your notes. And I realized that's right. And I soon was doing shows without looking at them, and they were often better. You can get too locked in on what's prepared for you, and it kind of stifles your improvising abilities. So once I learned that, I did better.
Did you have a conversation with your guests before they came onto the stage?
No, for some reason I didn't. I started not doing it, and then I kept not doing it. And I don't know if that improved anything or not. But
I think it improved everything because I don't do it either. I find
yeah,
that you lose the spontaneity if you have a conversation beforehand. So I'm very validated that you didn't do it either. Now, I
yeah.
know your all time favorite guest was Groucho Marx, right?
Well, Groucho means everything to me, yes.
What made him so special for you?
By the way, the only time that I broke my rule of not seeing the guests beforehand was with one of the top mafioso. He was really one of the big crooks, and later shot and killed in Times Square about several weeks after he was on my show. But I thought maybe I should say hello to him, since have I know many people in the mafia. I went down and I said hello, and he said hello, and he noticed my mic here, a lavalier mic, and he said, "What's that?" And I had the good taste to say, "Well, the FBI asked me to wear that." And his face changed, and then he went, "Oh, I see, it's a joke." Luckily, he saw it was a joke.
Well, you are world renowned for having mastered the art of the comic insult, right?
Oh, is that so?
Well, what's your secret for delivering those zingers?
Just often poor taste, but most of the time I come out ahead with them. But that's what I like about the show, is the ability to, it's a chance to, when you're lucky, score with a zinger. So you know what? This is odd. Often I remember an awkward moment from those times. About a week ago, I remembered one. I don't know who the guest was. I was irritated by his answer. And I said, I know the acoustics are bad in here, but did you hear what I really said? and there was a change in his expression. I know it was a man, but I don't know who it was.
That was a very subtle way of conveying to him that you were not
Yeah.
too happy. I like that. Now, let me
And
ask
there
you
was
about.
another time where I remember that I said, maybe you could bring yourself now to answer something resembling what I asked you.
I'm picking up lots of tips, Dick.
Yeah, you can use those.
Okay. Now, tell me about Groucho Marx. What made him so special for you?
Oh my God. Groucho is just one of the great comic geniuses of all time. I watched his television show back in Nebraska. I mean, I was in Nebraska, he was not. And I remember my father telling me, who lived in a small town in Nebraska, when the Marx Brothers, when the first Marx Brothers movie hit Grand Island, Nebraska, people literally were unable to stay in their seats. They laughed and stiffened and sometimes slipped to the ground. So I knew the Marx Brothers were something good. He may be certainly almost, if not the best thing that happened to me with doing a talk show, was getting to know this great comic genius and go to his house for dinner, which I couldn't believe. And I think I was the witness to once leaving a house that he had been invited to for dinner in Beverly Hills, took me along. And that was the origin of saying to the hostess, I've had a wonderful evening, but this wasn't it.
You said that?
Groucho.
Well, like I said, you are the master of the zinger. I remember you wrote the famous line for Johnny Carson when he said, having your taste criticized by Dorothy Kilgallen is like having your clothes criticized by Emmett Kelly. That was a
Yes, that would
great
require an
line.
asterisk now because how many, there's been at least a generation or two who don't remember that Emmett Kelly was a wonderful clown, shabby in appearance. And yeah, I said that about Kilgallen.
That was a great line. Were there ever any big stars that you wanted to get on the show that you just couldn't get?
Sadly, yes.
Who?
I got along with him. We were always congenial when we met. And I just didn't press hard enough to get Frank Sinatra to agree that we would have a good time on the air together, which we would have.
You know, that's amazing because I'm very good friends with Tina Sinatra, who was on our show a few months
I
ago.
know you did a show with her.
Tina said that her father loved you.
Could you repeat that in case I missed it? Yeah. Oh, that's nice to know. Yeah, I so liked him and found him so likable. And it's my fault. I think if I'd tried one more time, I might well have convinced him.
Now, you interviewed Judy Garland 6 months before she died. And that interview, Dick, it was so heartbreaking because she clearly was not in very good shape. What are your recollections of Judy?
Well, I remember being surprised that she came on. I mean, I knew she was not necessarily ailing badly, but not in great shape. And she agreed, and it astounded me. And she came on, and she was quite charming, clearly battered by her life. And it was not, it seemed like it was even shorter than that she, after leaving my studio, did a show in England with someone and died some weeks after. I don't know how many, but I'm glad I could at least add her to my list of people you don't usually get.
Well, you know, Dick, over the years, you've met and gotten to know many big stars who had a very difficult time dealing with fame. A lot of them crashed and burned, like Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. What do you think is the best way for a celebrity to handle being famous?
Oh boy, if I knew that, I could write a wonderful essay on the subject. Fame is a very mixed blessing. And you think it's going to be nice to be recognized when you go on the street or wherever. And that becomes old very quickly.
So, did you ever have a problem dealing with being famous?
Yeah. I went back to a high school reunion, and a guy comes over with a drink and says, "What do you want to drink?" And I said, "I'm really not, I had something, I don't need a drink." And he said, "Oh, I see, you're too good to drink with me." And I said, "I think you answered the question."
I don't know where you come up with these lines.
Well, I don't know whether, but that's such a dumb thing to say. There are dumb people, you know, we have to be one as rarely as we can and endure the people you can't stand.
Did you ever speak to any of the guests on your show that you knew were in trouble with drugs or alcohol? Did you ever cross that line and say, you know, you're on a dangerous path. I'm worried about your health?
No, I never did do that I remember, but I remember having the feeling of, I wish I could save this person. I wish I knew something to say to get them off their well-known drunkenness, drugs, and so on. Richard Burton, I wish I could have rescued him from his indulgences, both smoking and alcohol. I remember once I walked into his dressing room and there was a package of Marlboros on the desk. And he picked it up and said, "I'm afraid these are going to be with me to the end of my days." I didn't come up with the right thing to say then, which might have been, "Why don't you make today the right last end of it?" But Burton, on a show of mine that you can find online, Cavett, Richard Burton, he talked about being drunk and a drunk so eloquently straight into the camera that places that try to help people with alcoholism and so on wrote to me and said, "Can we get copies of that?" And everything he said, and I sent them. But I remember he just said, "I know what it's like. I know how you feel. When you're a drunk, it's always 3 o'clock in the morning," and on so eloquently that it's moving to watch it. I think I watch it about once a year.
I do remember that episode, and it
Yeah,
really was heartbreaking because he had enormous insight into his own failings, his own deficits, and that was quite
that's right.
remarkable.
He knew he was a victim, and he was talking about it so well. But it was, you could say it was sad to watch in its way because it was so heartfelt.
Now, I wanted to say to him, the only thing wrong with your life is that you're in it.
Wish I'd thought of that.
So, Dick, with all the big stars who came on your show, did you ever get starstruck or really nervous about interviewing them?
I don't think so. I knew that I might, but usually when they were there and confronted them and they seemed maybe pleased to be there, it relaxed me so that really was not a problem.
Well, now, of course, I have to ask you about one of the most notorious episodes of your show, the infamous showdown between Gore Vidal and Norman Mailer. What was going through your head when those two men were throwing daggers at each other?
On my computer the other day, I turned on, and for some reason, from somewhere, it would see it now. Cavett's notorious show with Norman Mailer and Gore Vidal. There's never been anything like it. It was someplace you could go to and see the show, a lesser known network or something. But that show stands alone as a real phenomenon. They were out to gut each other and even got me into it. I mean, I thought I would sit there and just try to conduct the show, But then Mailer, what is it he said to me? Oh, he said something that annoyed me. And I said, he said to me at one point, why don't you just read the next question off your question sheet? And I thought, I'm not David Frost. I don't need a question sheet. And I said to him, and why don't you fold it 5 ways and put it where the moon don't shine? This is often people they often get it wrong and have the sun instead of the moon, but the correct version is and put it where the fold it 5 ways, put it where the moon don't shine, and that got popular for a while.
I was always wanting to know what happened after the camera stopped rolling.
I got in a cab with Gore to go to some place he was going and had invited me along, and he said that Mailer had smashed a beer can on his head in the dressing room. And then tried to laugh it off. And he said, I should have known that something might happen after that. Yeah.
I remember another infamous episode of your show. It was January 25th, 1980, when literary critic Mary McCarthy said that every word that Lillian Hellman ever wrote was a lie, including the words and the. So Lillian
Funny you
Hellman.
should mention that. Absolutely, yesterday, I found a piece of paper with a whole story of that story on it, and how even her and I remember when she said it, and even her what is it you don't like about Lillian Hellman? Because she's such a dishonest writer. And there was a kind of a chord, and she said, you find her dishonest. She said, she is such a dishonest writer that even her ands and thes are lies. Hellman was watching, called me the next day, said, why didn't you defend me? And I said, well, Lillian, of all people I never think of as needing help to be defended, you are one of them. But she sued and she took it to court and
Yeah, she sued for defamation. You ended up doing a play about that interview called Hellman versus McCarthy, correct?
yes, and an excellent play written by a man named Moore, last name Mori, as I recall. Forgive me if I'm wrong. And that play really was a grabber. I mean, the audience gasped at some of the things in it that were in fact true.
But you know, Dick, as a former lawyer and judge, that litigation poses the really difficult question of where the line stands between freedom of speech for a literary critic and malicious libel. Do you have an opinion on that question?
I lived with that question. I didn't really, except I usually think that nothing should be censored and that free speech should be, in fact, free speech. And there was a lot of cowardice exhibited at times in network decisions, and it always annoyed me. And I don't know, what can you do about it?
Not much. Now, I'm sure you know that on March 27th, 1968, we were all shocked when Christine Jorgensen, the first really famous trans woman, walked off your show when you asked her about the state of her romantic relationship with her wife, which I thought was a very innocent question. She was the only scheduled.
I've forgotten that name. Christine Jorgensen was the first well-known sex change. And I don't recall, this will show you how I'm imperfect. I don't remember that she walked off the show. She did, though, eh?
She was the only scheduled guest on your show.
Yeah, I had 90 minutes.
She walked off. You spent the rest of the show just talking to the audience. I was completely mesmerized. I would have thought that would be one of the worst nightmares of your career.
I got to find now. Thank you. You brought it back, and it was. Yeah, I guess I repressed it with that lovely mechanism that allows us to forget things that were awful. Yeah, that was a tough time. I'm going to see if Dick Cavett, Christine Jorgensen can be reached on Google or online somewhere. Probably can.
It's definitely available. What would you say was the worst interview you ever did that you were really not happy with?
Oh, any number that I later thought, why did I leave out this? Or why didn't I get more friendly with the guests? Or why didn't I get funnier? I could have, and I missed all the opportunities. Uh, I usually, though, put out the show that I had just done because you have to, because you have another one the next day, virtually almost always the next day, except on Friday. And so
You let
usually
it
I
go.
had a fairly tolerable opinion of what I had done.
Well, another fascinating thing, Dick, in the early 70s, you were very critical of President Richard Nixon on your show. And then we all discovered that Nixon mentioned your name 26 times in the White House tapes that were released after Watergate. He was desperate to bring you down. How did that make you feel?
No, I've thought maybe someday I will listen to all those tapes to find out what the 26 things he said about me were. One of them is well known and it's online. And the exact quote, after talking to one of his lickspittles, Haldeman, was it? Cavett, how can we screw him?
Yes, that was one of the big lines.
Find that and see it. Yeah, but Nixon really couldn't stand the sight of me, and it was more than mutual. And I really detested his viscera. But when he said, "How can I screw? How can we screw him?" He found a way. One of my staff, and then another, and then another. After a few days, said, "I've just gotten audited. I've never been audited in my life, and it's costing me money." The bastard decided if he couldn't get me, he'd attack my staff. Yeah, he was a piece of work.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, Dick, I want to mention some names to you and ask you what comes into your mind when you hear these names. I'm going to start with Truman Capote.
Haze of pain. On one show, he was very unhappy, and I said something like, "How are you? What's bothering you so?" And he said, in effect, he was living in this awful haze of pain. He said haze of pain 3 times. It's a good phrase. I felt sorry for Truman. He did suffer a good bit. Brilliant writer, of course, and needs no ghost come from the grave, my lord, to tell us this. Is that Hamlet? I think so. Anyway, someone will correct me. Yeah, Truman was a genius, hard life, and I don't know why so many brilliant people have to have so much pain. You'd think they'd be happy to be what they are. How rarely that happens.
No, it seems that the torment is actually harnessed into creativity and artistry. That's the impression I get.
It seems that way, doesn't it? Yeah, that the great gift that they have, you think would make their life ideal, and it often does not. And I know it's baffling to them.
Tell me, Dick, about Betty Davis. What was she like?
She wasn't like anything, she was unique. It always bothers me as a son of English teachers when somebody says something was very unique. There aren't degrees of uniqueness. It's either unique or you're not. Anyway, Betty Davis, great actress, of course. And I knew sitting there with her, I am lucky. I am in touch and sitting next to one of the great talents and brilliant minds in the entertainment world. She watching her on the show thrills me all over again. If I, about once a year, decide it's time for Betty Davis again. She said so many good things.
Did she make you feel comfortable as an interviewer? You weren't intimidated by
Yeah,
her at all?
right away. I knew I'm going to enjoy this all the way through, and always did when she was on.
What about Marlon Brando? What was it like interviewing him?
I don't think that was like anything I could describe either. Brando, whom I never expected to get, but I called him once. Somehow I got hold of his phone number, and we talked for about 2 hours on the phone. And I said, "Would you ever do my show?" And he said that he would think about that. And luckily he did and decided to. When he came through the stage door at where I taped my show, the studio, my staff just all kind of, there was a sort of chord of music in the air thing. It's Marlon Brando. And by the way, you did a wonderful job with my two friends who worked for me. Joan Kramer and David Healy were two of my very best employees, and they have gone on to produce such good stuff.
Oh, I loved having them on the show. You mentioned Marlon Brando. Were you there when he broke the jaw of a paparazzo photographer in New York?
Yes, I was standing there. We had gone down to Chinatown to try to find a restaurant that Marlon, as I was surprised to be able to call him, wanted to find. And we were standing on the curb near where we thought that restaurant was when a limo that had been following us from the studio, from the taping with Brando, contained Ron Galella, the pest. And I couldn't believe it, but I don't remember exactly what the dialogue was, but Galella said whatever magic words they were. Maybe you remember. And wham, in the face. And that was scary. We went then and turned quickly and got into a cab. It was a real punch in the face. We got into a cab. I had a Chinese cab driver, and he said, "Get out." Pardon this imitation. You fight. I see you fight. You trouble. Get out of my cab. And Brando said, "We're going to the Russian tea room." Yes, sir. And we did. But Marlon got sued for that. And one of the quotes I cherish from him is, I said, "Is it true you really get, what did this cost you?" He said, "It cost me the best $26,000 I ever spent." Never been anything like him.
Yeah, he was absolutely unique. Now, I have your box set, and one of your box sets includes your interview with Lucille Ball. And you described her before the interview, you described her as a hardened showgirl. What did you mean by that?
That's a little frank for someone you're glad to finally have on and you enjoy, but she was tough. She had been toughened by being a showgirl first and then a star, and with a tough, not to be defeated personality that I liked.
I remember the Orson Welles interview when he just turned the tables and started interviewing you. What did you think of that?
I thought, is this a dream? Is Orson Welles interviewing me, talking to me? Orson Welles, the Orson Welles. Yeah, that's one of the things where I'm really lucky to have gotten that job, so that Orson Welles was part of my life. And I liked him so much. I did a lot of good things with him. there's a genius. If somebody says, let's see, authentic genius, it's Orson Welles.
For sure, for sure. Now, of all the music groups you interviewed, I have to say that my favorite was ABBA. You interviewed them in 1981, just 1 year before they broke up. Could you tell when you met them that all was not well in their marriages?
No, oh, well, I think maybe I did eventually.
You really are the last person to get a really in-depth interview with all four of them. And it
No,
was,
I got credit for that I hadn't expected. I didn't know how adored they had been. That was a strange and unique experience.
going to Sweden and interviewing them for sure.
Yeah.
So, Dick, of all the interviews you did, do you remember which one got you the most response from viewers in terms of letters or phone calls to the network?
No, I don't. I I got so I had read too many letters, but several things caused an outpouring of mail. One that I remember best was from a woman in Pennsylvania somewhere, I think maybe. And my secretary sort of pushed it under the blotter on her desk. And I said, "What is that?" She didn't want me to see the letter in which the woman called me something like a little sawed off, you little sawed off faggot shrimp, she said.
Oh my
And
God.
I said, I'm not sawed off. I don't think she got it, but I never heard from her again.
You're really something.
Sawed off faggot communist shrimp. That's what she saw me as. I don't think everybody does, do you? No.
I certainly don't think you're sawed off.
No, that's what I'm not. If I were sawed off, I'd admit it.
I want to mention to our viewers that there are numerous DVD box sets of the Dick Cavett Show featuring some of his most iconic interviews. There's the Hollywood Greats featuring Betty Davis, Alfred
Yes.
Hitchcock, Marlon Brando, Fred Astaire, Orson Welles, and many more. There's the Rock Icons featuring Janis Joplin, David Bowie, George Harrison, Stevie Wonder, to name just a few. There's the Comic Legends featuring Woody Allen, Lucille Ball, Bob Hope, Groucho Marx, and many more. There's 10 other DVDs featuring your interviews with the greatest newscasters, the greatest baseball stars, the pioneers of New York radio, and inside the minds of the great comic geniuses of our time. So,
Wow.
Dick, I want to ask you, how does it make you feel that your TV shows are still being watched and enjoyed today by a whole new generation of viewers?
Well, it doesn't make me feel like a sawed off faggot shrimp, I can tell you that. I love that.
I'm sure you know, Dick, that a number of big movies have featured clips from your show, like Annie Hall, Forrest Gump, Apollo
Yeah, that's right.
13, Frequency. Have you ever been surprised to see yourself on the screen when you're watching a movie?
Yes, and I'm surprised to see myself in a number of documentaries that I barely remember doing, where I'd be interviewed for 10 minutes. And 2 years later, there I am in a documentary that I haven't seen. I love being in movies because as a kid, I used to think, do people like me ever get into movies? The people at the movie stars must come from somewhere. I don't know of any that come from Lincoln, Nebraska. Actually, probably there were some. I can see myself at times where I, honest to God, could pass a polygraph test that I never did this, I never appeared in this, I never said these things. And that's a little unsettling, I must say.
Are you proud of the career you've had? I mean, look at the people you've interacted with, look at the popularity that still lasts to this day. Can you think of any other talk show that has that many DVDs out there?
I didn't know, I've never counted those, but no. But I must say, I do, in Finding Old Mail, like it when people say, you brought me thrills of people I never expected to see. And in fact, get to know on your show. I figure that was probably a service I needn't be ashamed of.
Oh, far from it. Do you watch any of the talk shows today?
I do watch talk shows, yeah. The problem in talking about any one of them is that I know all the people. And if I talk about one, I feel like I have to mention them all.
Well, I have to tell you that certainly Jimmy Fallon and probably many others have said that you were their inspiration. And I can tell you that you certainly were my inspiration, Mr. Dick Cavett.
Are you kidding?
You were my inspiration as a
I can
kid.
go around saying I'm responsible partly for Harvey Brownstone, excellent talker, good. You did a wonderful job with my two old former employees. And I want you to admit right now that you are really good.
Oh, Dick, that means the world to me coming from you. Let me tell you. I have only one more question for you, and it's this.
Okay. What time is it?
How would you like to be remembered?
As someone who lived 250 years.
Amen, amen, amen. I have to tell you, Dick, it's been such an immense honor meeting you, having this chance to celebrate your monumental career. I hope you know that you've inspired a whole generation of interviewers like me. We're carrying the torch, and we're striving to give the public the kind of high quality, substantive interviews that you became famous for. And I thank you for that with all my heart, Dick.
Wow. Harvey, you're going to make me blush if you're not careful.
Well, this is a real pinch me moment in my life. I thank you so much for taking the time and giving me the honor of having you appear on our show. Thank you, Dick.
I certainly enjoyed it. And if anyone tries to tell you you don't have what it takes, they're wrong. Now, Harvey, you are one of the people who has learned how to do a very difficult and tricky thing. You're very good at it, and your show is well worth watching. Make Harvey Brownstone part of your life. You wouldn't be sorry.
Dick, thank you so very, very much. I'm completely verklempt. You know what that means?
Yes, we used to say that in Nebraska, but we didn't know what it meant.
Well, you got me verklempt. Thank you, Dick. I love you so much. Our guest has been the legendary Dick Cavett, whose DVD box sets and books are all available on Amazon and wherever books and DVDs are sold. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time.
Thanks, Harvey.
Thank you to my producer, Steve Silver, my managers, Rick Marcelli and Robin Bragg Marcelli at the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, my director of programming, Robert Monaghan, my PR directors, Eileen Shapiro and Jimmy Starr, and my entire team at the XPTV1 network in the UK.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.